They said she had lost her mind. They whispered behind her back, their voices laced with laughter and disbelief, their eyes filled with mockery every time she passed by in that small Arizona town. A doctor's daughter marrying an Apache? They scoffed. What's next, and a beggar in the family? But Clara Monroe didn't care. She had seen something in him that the world was too blind to notice. His name was Chayton, meaning falcon in his native tongue, a quiet, stoic man who worked as a stable hand at her father's ranch, with the kind of silence that held stories deeper than the desert canyon itself. To most, he was just a simple man who spoke little, worked hard and slept under the stars. But to Clara, he was strength carved from stone, kindness molded by struggle, and mystery wrapped in humility. The story began one autumn evening, when the sky burned orange and gold over the mesas. Clara had wandered beyond the fences, her sketchbook in hand, her thoughts tangled in rebellion. She didn't want another fancy suitor from town, not another man who only saw her as a pretty face and her father's wealth. She wanted freedom, adventure, something real. That's when she saw him, a lone figure on horseback, dark hair catching the dying light, eyes like storm clouds. He was fixing the broken fence line with steady hands and quiet concentration. When he looked up, their eyes met, and time seemed to pause, the kind of silence that says everything without a word. From that day, Clara found excuses to visit the horses more often. She brought water, sometimes bread, sometimes just questions. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked once. He looked at her, expression unreadable, then said softly, "The wind keeps me company." She laughed, but something about his words stayed with her. Every time he spoke, it was like he peeled back a layer of her soul she didn't know existed. Weeks passed, and what began as curiosity bloomed into something deeper, a forbidden tenderness that defied the rules of her world. When her father discovered them one evening, standing too close under the barn light, the fury in his voice shook the walls. "You'll not throw away your life on a man who cleans stalls," he roared, but Clara stood firm. "I love him, Father. I'd rather have a lifetime of his silence than a mansion full of lies." Father's face turned pale with rage, and he shouted that she was no daughter of his if she went through with it. But she did. Against every warning, every sneer, every ounce of ridicule from the townsfolk, Clara Monroe became Clara Chayton, the woman who married a simple Apache man. Their wedding was small, just the two of them under a canyon arch, the wind humming through the rocks like a hymn. He wore a simple white shirt, she a faded dress with flowers in her hair. No fancy gowns, no church bells. Yet as she looked into his eyes, Clara felt richer than any bride in satin. When they kissed, the world seemed to fade, and for a while, their love was enough to silence the world's cruelty. But the world, as always, refused to stay quiet. The townsfolk didn't forget. They laughed when they saw her walking barefoot through the market, hand in hand with him. They whispered when she bought fabric instead of jewels, when she lived in a small wooden cabin instead of her father's estate. "She's lost everything for a stable hand," one woman muttered. Another laughed. "Give it a year, she'll come crawling back." But Clara didn't crawl. She worked beside her husband, learned to milk goats, mend fences, and carry water from the creek. Her once delicate hands became rough, her skin kissed by the sun, and she had never felt more alive. Chayton never spoke of his past, not in detail, but sometimes when the moonlight fell over his face, Clara would see something haunted in his eyes, a shadow of a secret he carried like a wound. She would ask softly, "What are you thinking?" And he would answer, "Of a home I once knew, and a promise I made." She didn't press him further, trusting that one day he would tell her everything. Then came the drought, months without rain. The earth cracked like broken glass, the crops dying in the field. Work dried up, and hunger became their uninvited guest. Clara's father still refused to see her, and most neighbors turned their backs. But she and Chayton endured side by side. They shared crumbs of bread and whispered dreams of rain. Still, when she saw how thin he'd become, how he worked from dawn till dusk with little rest, she couldn't help but worry. "Chayton," she said one evening, touching his face, "there's something you're not telling me." He smiled faintly and said, "When the time is right, you'll know." The time came sooner than either expected. One night, under a moon bright as silver, a stranger rode into their clearing. His clothes were dusty but fine, his horse well-bred. He dismounted and called. Chayton by name, not boy, not Apache, But Lord Chayton, Clara froze, the words echoing like thunder in her mind. Chayton's jaw clenched. He turned to her, eyes dark and knowing. "It's time," he whispered. The stranger introduced himself as Mr. Randolph, a solicitor from New York. He explained, in a voice trembling with awe, that Chayton was the last living heir to a vast fortune left by an English trader who had married into the Apache tribe generations ago, and a man who had built mines, railroads, and hidden trust lands in his descendants' names. "For years we searched," Mr. Randolph said, "but the line was thought lost, until now." Clara stood in stunned silence. The man she had loved when the world mocked her, save the man who fixed fences and mended saddles, was the heir to a hidden fortune beyond imagination. Chayton looked at her, his expression unreadable, then said softly, "I never wanted gold or land. I only wanted peace. But maybe now I can give you the life you deserve." Tears filled her eyes as she shook her head. "You already did,"